In the endless dark of space, a single signal broke the silence. It was weak at first, just a soft echo traveling between stars. But inside that echo was a desperate voice, a call for help. It came from a planet called Varus 9, a world once full of life, color, and peace. For centuries, Varus 9 had stood as a symbol of harmony, where great crystal cities floated above green oceans and the skies shimmered with twin suns. But that peace had been shattered. The planet was under attack by a force that showed no mercy, the Krell Dominion. The Krell were not just another alien species. They were conquerors. Their ships darkened the skies of any world they invaded. Their armies burned everything that lived, and their machines left behind nothing but smoke and metal. They didn't come to talk, to trade, or to share knowledge. They came to own. For Varus 9, their arrival meant the end. Entire cities were crushed under orbital bombardments. The proud Varians, tall, graceful beings with crystal-like skin, fought bravely but had no chance. The Krell were too many, too ruthless, and too advanced, so the Varians did the only thing left they could do. They sent a signal. It was an open SOS, a universal call that anyone, anywhere in the galaxy could hear. It didn't ask for weapons or soldiers. It was simply a cry. Help us, please, anyone who can hear this. It was sent in all directions, spreading like light across the stars. The Varians hoped that someone would listen, but as hours turned into days and days into weeks, there was no answer. The galaxies were full of powerful civilizations, yet none came. Some ignored the message out of fear. Others pretended they never heard it. The Krell Dominion was too strong, and no one wanted to risk their own worlds. But then something unexpected happened. On a small blue planet far from the center of the galaxy, a world known to most as Earth, the signal was received. It was caught by deep space listening satellites orbiting above the planet, handled by tired technicians who at first thought it was just interference or background radiation. But when they filtered the static, they heard the faint trembling words from Varus 9. It was real. Someone out there was begging for help. At first, the scientists didn't know what to do. Earth had made contact with alien civilizations before, but this was different. This wasn't diplomacy or trade. This was a cry for survival. Within hours, the message spread across Earth's communication networks, reaching military stations, research divisions, and the United Earth Council. People listened in silence as the recording played, the broken voice of a dying world pleading into the void. The sound was haunting, like the final words of someone who knew they might never be heard. And yet humanity listened. Not with indifference, not with fear, but with something else, recognition. Humans knew what it meant to suffer, to lose, to fight against impossible odds. Their own history was full of wars, disasters, and near extinctions. They understood the tone of desperation in that alien voice, because they had spoken it themselves countless times in their past. That connection, that shared pain, made the decision for them. The United Earth Council met in emergency session. Some argued that Earth should stay out of it. The Krell Dominion was too dangerous. If humanity intervened, it could mean war, not just for one planet, but for the entire human race. Others, however, stood up and reminded everyone what it meant to be human, to act when no one else would, to help even when the cost was high. If we ignore this, one commander said, then what's the point of everything we've built? What's the point of calling ourselves civilized? Across the planet, public opinion began to rise. Ordinary people heard the SOS and demanded action. Soldiers volunteered before any orders were given. Scientists prepared technology for deep space travel. Humanity's leaders knew what they had to do. They voted, and the answer was unanimous. Earth would respond. Within days, spaceports came alive. Massive ships prepared for launch. Carriers, destroyers, and hospital vessels. The operation was named Dawnfire, symbolizing hope rising from darkness. Every soldier, pilot, and engineer who joined the mission knew what was at stake. They weren't going to fight for territory or wealth. They were going to save lives. Meanwhile, on Varus 9, the situation grew worse. The Krell had broken through the last of the planetary defenses. Cities that once floated like jewels above the oceans now crashed into the waves. The Varians, hiding in caves and shattered buildings, began to lose hope. Many believed no one would come. Their leaders continued to transmit the SOS, even as the machines of war surrounded them. Then, one night, their communication towers picked up something. A reply. It was faint but clear, a human voice cutting through the static of space. "This is the United Earth Fleet," it said. We received your distress call. Hold your position. Help is on the way. For a moment there was silence on Varus 9. Then disbelief turned into tears and fear turned into hope. No one had ever answered a call from a dying world before. The humans, the Deathworlders as other species called them, were coming. Across the galaxy, alien observers watched in shock. The Deathworlders were known for their strength, for surviving conditions most species couldn't imagine. They were unpredictable, emotional, and fiercely protective of life, especially when someone asked for help. But no one had expected them to involve themselves in a war so far from home. The Krell Dominion certainly hadn't. Back on Earth, families said goodbye to those leaving for the mission. The fleet's engines lit up the sky as thousands of tons of human steel rose from the atmosphere. People on the ground watched and whispered prayers, hoping their soldiers would return. The mission was dangerous, but there was pride in knowing that humanity was doing something no one else dared to do. In command centers, screens flickered with coordinates, flight paths, and encrypted transmissions. The fleet's admiral looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, a civilization was waiting for them. Scared, surrounded, and alone. He didn't see aliens. He saw people in need, and for him that was enough. The journey to Varus 9 would take weeks through the Wormgate systems. During that time, the soldiers trained, the engineers prepared weapons and aid packages, and the medics rehearsed evacuation procedures. Every person aboard the fleet carried the same thought. They called for help. We answered. As the fleet approached the outer rim of the Varus system, the first signs of battle appeared on their scanners. Debris fields, broken satellites, and the lifeless remains of ships that once tried to defend the planet. But through all that chaos, one signal still pulsed, weak but steady. The Varians were still alive, still hoping. The humans didn't hesitate. They adjusted their course, powered their weapons, and prepared to enter orbit. The calm before the storm had ended. What began as a faint cry in the dark was about to ignite a fire that the galaxy would never forget. Because when the aliens called for help, humanity, and for all its flaws, its rage, and its compassion, chose not to look away. They chose to answer. The news that humanity had decided to answer the distress call of Varus 9 spread quickly across the stars. It didn't take long for the Galactic Council to react. The Council was an old alliance made up of dozens of species who claimed to keep peace in the galaxy. They met on a shining world called Terrell, where floating towers reached above the clouds and diplomats spoke in 1,000 languages. When the Council received confirmation that the humans were preparing for war, fear swept through the chambers. The Council's members had known about the Deathworlders for years. Humans came from a planet that most species considered too dangerous for life. Earth was full of violent storms, shifting continents, deadly animals, and diseases that could kill most alien species in seconds. Yet somehow humans not only survived there, they thrived. To many alien scientists, this made no sense. To live on such a world, humans had to evolve differently. Stronger, faster, more adaptable, and more aggressive. Because of this, the rest of the galaxy gave them a name: Deathworlders. It wasn't meant as an insult, but as a warning. Every species that had ever tried to fight or intimidate humanity had learned the same lesson. Humans do not back down. Their wars on their own planet had lasted for centuries. They had wiped out diseases that once killed millions, rebuilt cities after nuclear winters, and tamed worlds that others wouldn't even dare to step on. To the Council, humans were a paradox and capable of great kindness, but also terrible fury. So when the Galactic Council heard that the humans were sending a war fleet to help Varus 9, the reaction was immediate. The counselors gathered, their voices overlapping in panic. One species with silver skin hissed, "If the Deathworlders go, they will not stop until the entire system burns." Another shouted, "They will fight like beasts and the Krell will answer with genocide." But in one of the far corners of the chamber, a quiet voice spoke. A diplomat from Varus 9 itself. His body shimmered like glass under the chamber lights. "They are the only ones who answered," he said softly. "You all heard our call and you turned away. The Deathworlders did not." The chamber fell silent for a moment, but fear soon drowned out reason. The Council sent a transmission to Earth. The message was polite on the surface, but full of warnings. They told the humans that interference would destabilize interstellar relations. They said that attacking the Krell Dominion would provoke consequences beyond comprehension. Behind those words, the meaning was clear. Stay out of it. When the message reached Earth, it was brought straight to the United Earth Council in Geneva. Representatives, generals, and scientists gathered around a great round table, reading the transmission in silence. Many of them already knew what the response would be, but they waited for the official word from the council chairwoman, a woman named Admiral Sophia Marek, who had commanded fleets during Earth's last interplanetary conflict. She stood up, holding the message in her hand. "They call us Deathworlders," she said calmly. "They fear what we might do, but they forget why we fight." Her eyes moved from one delegate to another. "No one asks for help and dies unheard, not while we can still do something about it." That single sentence became the rallying cry for the mission. It spread across Earth within hours, printed on banners, broadcast on every network, echoed by every person who believed that compassion still had a place in the galaxy. The preparations began immediately. Every major spaceport came alive with activity. In the dark of night, massive warships were powered up, carriers the size of cities, destroyers armed with rail cannons, and support vessels carrying food, medicine, and engineers. The mission was given a name, Operation Dawnfire. The meaning was simple. They were bringing light to a dying world. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful as the fleet assembled above it, but inside every ship, the atmosphere was tense. Pilots were trained for combat in space, but few had ever gone beyond the solar system. Engineers checked and rechecked every system, knowing that a single failure could mean the loss of thousands of lives. Medics prepared for casualties, stocking supplies for alien biology as best they could. On the carrier Horizon Spear, Admiral Marek addressed her crew. Her voice echoed through every deck. "We are not going to conquer," she said. "We are not going to dominate. We are going to answer a cry for help. We fight so that others don't have to." Her speech was broadcast across the fleet, and it lit a fire in every heart that heard it. Even on Earth, ordinary people felt the weight of what was happening. Families stood outside at night, watching the streaks of light rise into the sky as ships left the atmosphere. Children waved at the sky, not fully understanding, while parents whispered prayers. The world that had once been divided by politics and borders now stood united for something far greater than itself. In alien systems, news channels reported the movement of the human fleet with a mix of fear and fascination. Some species mocked the humans, calling them reckless. Others whispered that maybe, just maybe, the Deathworlders were doing what no one else had the courage to do. The Krell Dominion spies also heard the reports. They laughed, believing that even 100 human fleets would be no match for them. They didn't understand what kind of people they were dealing with. Meanwhile, in the deep space communication hubs, the Galactic Council sent another message, this one more urgent. "If you proceed," they warned, "you will be on your own." To that, Earth simply replied, "We always have been." Operation Dawnfire became the largest human mobilization since the colonization of Mars. Thousands of men and women volunteered, even when they knew they might not return. Each carried a patch on their suit, a burning sun rising over a shattered world. The symbol represented not destruction, but renewal. In secret council meetings, debates continued. Some members suggested sending their own fleets to contain the humans, while others argued that such a move would start a war even greater than the one already raging. The Varians, weak but grateful, sent a final message to Earth. "If we do not survive, let it be known that you tried when others turned away." The reply was short: "You will survive." Back on the Horizon Spear, the crew ran final checks. The engines roared to life, shaking the massive ship. Across the fleet, thousands of voices echoed the same countdown. The stars stretched and blurred as the fleet jumped through the worm gate, leaving behind the safety of Earth and diving into the unknown. Every human on board knew what the galaxy called them: monsters, killers, survivors of a death world. But deep down, they also knew something else. The same fire that made them dangerous was the fire that gave them hope. They didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought because they could not stand by and watch another world fall. And so, as the fleet vanished into the light of faster-than-light travel, one message remained recorded in Earth's history logs. It was the official declaration that had started it all. "We heard the cry of Varus 9, we are coming. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as those who remember what it means to need help. The rest of the galaxy could only watch, afraid of what would come next. For better or worse, the Deathworlders had made their choice, and once humanity decided to move, nothing in the stars could stop them. When the human armada finally arrived in the Varus system, space was already burning. From the bridge windows of their ships, the crew could see Varus 9 below, half the planet covered in fire, its cities glowing like dying embers. Smoke rose so high it blurred the blue of the oceans. The once beautiful crystal towers of the Varians were nothing but shattered ruins. The Krell Dominion had nearly completed its work. Their massive warships hung in orbit like vultures circling their prey, launching bombardments that split the land apart. Millions had already died. The rest were running, hiding, or praying for a miracle. As the humans came out of jump space, the Krell fleet immediately noticed the intruders. Their sensors screamed warnings. They had expected no one. No one had ever dared to challenge them before. But there, against the black of space, came the unmistakable shapes of human warships. Sleek, armored, and bristling with weapons, they moved in formation like a wall of iron. At the center was the flagship, Horizon Spear, its hull glowing under the reflection of Varus's twin suns. In the command bridge, Admiral Sophia Marek stood silently, watching the planet through the viewing glass. Around her, the crew waited for orders. There was no speech, no negotiation, no time to talk. Everyone knew what had to be done. The signal from the Varians still echoed on their screens, a final SOS repeating the same message. "We are dying. Please." The Admiral's voice was calm when she finally spoke. "Weapons free," she said, and with those two words, humanity entered the war. What followed could only be described as chaos. But to human soldiers, it was controlled chaos, the kind they had been born and trained for. The first wave of ships launched a kinetic bombardment. Massive rods of tungsten dropped from orbit at near light speed. When they hit, the energy released was equal to nuclear fire. The Krell ships above the planet tried to respond, but the humans had already calculated every angle, every weak point. Their weapons tore through enemy shields like paper. Across the galaxy, hundreds of species watched the live feeds. Some watched in horror, others in awe. They had seen humans fight before, in simulations, in history archives. But never like this. Never with this level of focus, precision, and fury. The Deathworlders were famous for their strength, but this was something different. This was their full might, unleashed not for conquest, but for protection. The Krell commander tried to send a message demanding that the humans withdraw or face extermination. But the humans didn't respond. The transmission went unanswered. Instead, the Horizon Spear and its escorts opened fire again. Railguns fired so fast the metal glowed white-hot. Swarms of drones filled the void, moving like a storm of steel insects, cutting through Krell fighters with surgical precision. Below, on the planet's surface, the Varians saw fire streaking across the sky, but this time it wasn't the enemy. These were human drop pods entering the atmosphere. They fell like meteors, piercing through smoke and explosions, landing directly in the middle of battle zones. The doors of those pods opened, and from them emerged armored figures, human orbital drop troopers, faces hidden behind dark visors, carrying heavy weapons and shields glowing with energy fields. The Krell ground forces, monstrous in size and armed with plasma rifles, turned to fight, but the humans moved faster. They advanced through burning streets, pulling wounded Varians out of collapsed buildings, forming defensive lines around civilians. They fought with brutal efficiency, no hesitation, no retreat. Every trooper knew that behind them were the lives of those who had sent the SOS, and no human was going to let them die. Civilians later said that when they first saw the humans up close, they couldn't believe their eyes. These were the creatures the galaxy had called dangerous, unpredictable, too violent to be trusted. Yet here they were, shielding children from explosions, lifting debris barehanded to rescue survivors, and sharing their own oxygen with those who couldn't breathe. Their armor was scorched, their weapons roared like thunder, but their actions spoke louder than any word could. In orbit, the Krell began to retreat. Their commanders panicked as human ships kept closing in. The humans didn't pursue the retreating ships at first. They targeted the ones still firing on the planet. For every civilian building hit, 10 Krell warships were erased from the sky. It was not war anymore. It was punishment. Within hours, the once invincible Krell fleet was in ruins. Their largest dreadnought, the Krexar Prime, tried to warp out, but a human missile found it first. The explosion could be seen from the surface, a silent flash of white light that turned into a starburst. For the first time in centuries, the Krell Dominion suffered total defeat. When the last enemy ship fell silent, Admiral Marek gave a single order: cease fire. The battle was over. The fleet entered low orbit, sending medical teams, engineers, and supply drones to the surface. The skies of Varus 9, once filled with ash, were now crowded with human ships, their engines glowing like stars of hope. Every alien race watching from afar felt the same chill. They had seen what humans could do when provoked, but now they had seen what humans could do when protecting. The difference was terrifying, because this wasn't anger, this wasn't vengeance, this was mercy, delivered through the most unstoppable force the galaxy had ever known. Down below, the Varians emerged from the ruins, blinking under the harsh sunlight. They looked up to the sky and saw unfamiliar symbols on the sides of the ships. The flag of Earth, a blue and white sphere with stars around it. Some fell to their knees, others wept. For them it was over. They were alive. Human soldiers walked among them, helping the wounded, securing the streets. The air smelled of smoke and metal. But for the first time in months there was silence. A Varian elder approached one of the troopers, his body trembling. "You came," he said in disbelief. The human nodded simply. "You called," he replied. That small exchange was recorded by a dozen cameras and broadcast across the galaxy. It became one of the most famous moments in interstellar history, a symbol of what humanity truly was beneath its fierce reputation. In the following days, as the Krell survivors fled into deep space, the human fleet remained on Varus 9. They didn't claim the planet or its resources. They helped to rebuild. They brought medical supplies, food, and clean water. They buried the dead, Varian and human alike, and the galaxy kept watching. For the first time, many realized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or technology. It was its heart, the will to act when others would not. The Krell Dominion, once feared by a dozen worlds, had been broken in mere hours. Their pride was shattered, and their power began to crumble across their empire. Whispers spread through the stars: "The Deathworlders are coming." But this time those words carried not just fear, they carried hope. The galaxy had finally seen humanity's full fury, unleashed not for conquest, not for greed, but for protection. And in that moment, the legend of the Deathworlders was rewritten forever. When the war was finally over and the last Krell ship was gone, silence fell over Varus 9. The fires that had turned the sky red slowly died out, leaving behind a world scarred and broken. Entire cities had been reduced to blackened skeletons of crystal and metal. Oceans boiled near the coasts where the orbital bombardments had hit. Mountains were cracked, forests burned to ash, but under all that destruction there was something that had not been there before: life. Varus 9 was still alive. The Varians, the survivors of the nightmare, began to crawl out from underground shelters and ruined tunnels. Many of them had not seen sunlight in weeks. Their glass-like skin was dim and cracked, their voices hoarse, but their eyes held something new: hope. The skies above them were filled with strange human ships, but instead of weapons, these ships carried supplies, medical drones, and engineers. Humanity had stayed. They didn't come to conquer or claim Varus 9 as their own. They came to rebuild what had been destroyed. The human engineers and architects set up camps across the planet. Their machines hummed day and night, clearing rubble, repairing power lines, and purifying water. Varian builders, amazed by human efficiency, watched as the massive machines worked with precision and speed. The humans shared their technology freely, from portable reactors to atmospheric filters. Within weeks, the first city began to breathe again. To the Varians, it felt like a dream. Their rescuers were unlike any they had imagined. Humans were strange. They laughed even when exhausted. They sang while working, and they treated every life, alien or not, as worth saving. Human doctors moved among Varian survivors, learning their biology, creating medicines from their own supplies to heal wounds and infections. Even when Varian medicine failed, human stubbornness did not. One human doctor reportedly said, "We didn't come this far to lose anyone now." But while the Varians welcomed their saviors, the rest of the galaxy didn't know what to think. The Galactic Council received reports of what had happened, and many of its members were shocked. In less than a week, the humans had defeated the Krell Dominion's strongest fleet, something no one had ever done before. The images broadcast across the galaxy showed human soldiers walking through burning cities, carrying alien children in their arms, and human warships hovering like silent guardians above the world they had just saved. Some species watched with admiration. They called the humans heroes, protectors of the weak and defenders of hope. But others were afraid. They whispered that the Deathworlders were too powerful, too unpredictable. If humanity could destroy the Krell so easily, what would stop them from doing the same to anyone else? To those who only saw the war, humans looked like a storm, fierce, unstoppable, and capable of ending civilizations. As debates raged in the council chambers, Varus 9 slowly began to heal. The humans helped rebuild schools, homes, and communication networks. They taught the Varians how to use certain technologies but never demanded control. In return, the Varians offered their art, their culture, and their gratitude. Together, they created something new, a blend of two worlds that had once been strangers. Months later, in the heart of the rebuilt capital city, a monument was raised. It stood taller than any building, half made from shimmering Varian crystal, half from polished human steel. At its center were two hands, one human, one Varian, carved reaching toward each other, meeting in the middle. Below the sculpture, an inscription was engraved in both languages. They came not to talk us into peace, but to make it possible. When the monument was revealed, the entire city gathered to witness it. Human engineers stood beside Varian leaders, both races silent as the words were read aloud. It was not just a message of gratitude, it was a truth. The humans had not come to negotiate or debate peace while others died. They had come to act, to fight for it, and to pay the price that came with it. The story of the monument spread faster than light through the communication networks of the galaxy. Every world, every space station, every colony heard about Varus 9 and the Deathworlders who had answered the call for help. The recordings of the inscription were replayed millions of times. For some it was inspiring, proof that even the most feared species could be noble. For others it was unsettling, proof that peace could only exist because someone had the power to enforce it. On Earth, the footage brought tears to millions. The soldiers who had gone to Varus 9 returned as heroes, but many never came back at all. Their names were carved into walls of remembrance, their stories told in schools and families. The people of Earth didn't celebrate victory with parades. Instead, they honored it quietly, knowing that while they had saved a world, it had cost lives. Meanwhile, across alien worlds, the legend of the Deathworlders began to grow. Stories spread of their bravery, their strange mix of kindness and fury. Some said they were angels of war. Others said they were monsters who fought only when pushed too far. But every version of the story ended the same way, with the image of that monument on Varus 9, gleaming under two suns. Over time, Varus 9 became a symbol, a reminder that sometimes peace doesn't come from words alone. Sometimes it must be built piece by those who are willing to face the fire. The Varians rebuilt their world stronger than before. Human engineers stayed for years, helping establish defense systems and trade routes so Varus 9 would never be helpless again. In one recorded speech, a Varian elder said, "Before the humans came, we thought strength was something to be feared. Now we understand. True strength protects." Those words reached even the farthest corners of the galaxy, where other civilizations began to question their old beliefs about Earth and its people. The Galactic Council could no longer ignore humanity's growing influence. Some members proposed alliances, others called for restrictions, but everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had changed the balance of power forever. Yet the humans themselves didn't boast. To them, Varus 9 wasn't about power or reputation. It was about doing what was right. When asked later why they risked so much, Admiral Sophia Merrick simply said, "Because someone had to." That simple answer became as famous as the inscription on the monument. It reminded every species that heroes don't always come from gentle worlds or peaceful histories. Sometimes they come from death worlds, from places that teach survival, endurance, and compassion through pain. Years later, as Varus 9 thrived again with green fields and rebuilt cities, the monument still stood. Visitors from across the stars came to see it. Diplomats, students, soldiers, and wanderers. Some came to honor the humans. Others came to understand them. And standing beneath the joined hands of steel and crystal, everyone felt the same thing. the weight of a promise that peace was not given. It was earned, and sometimes, to protect it, fire had to burn first. So the message continued to echo across the galaxy, carried in every language, every memory. They came not to talk us into peace, but to make it possible. Years passed after the war on Varus 9. The smoke and ashes that once covered the planet became nothing more than distant memories, and life began to thrive again. Cities that had once been destroyed were rebuilt, stronger and more beautiful than before. The glass towers of the Varian stood beside the steel and concrete structures of human design, creating a blend of two worlds that had once been strangers. Varus 9 was no longer just a planet. It had become a living symbol, a reminder that survival is not only about strength, but about balance between power and compassion. Every visitor who stepped onto Varus 9 could feel that balance. The streets buzzed with trade, laughter, and the soft hum of alien and human machines working together. Varian children learned Earth's history in their schools, while human engineers studied Varian energy crystals. There were memorials everywhere, quiet, shining places where people remembered the battle and the ones who had fallen to protect life. But the monument in the heart of the capital remained the most famous. The two hands, one human and one Varian, still reached for each other, untouched by time. Travelers from every corner of the galaxy came to see it. Some came to give thanks. Others came out of curiosity or awe, yet all left with the same feeling: respect. Over time, Varus 9 became more than a memory of war. It became a story that every civilization knew. The galaxy had many legends, but few were told with such emotion. The story of the humans, the Death Worlders, spread from one star system to another like wildfire. No matter how the story changed from voice to voice, its heart stayed the same. When the call for help went out, the humans came. And when they arrived, they didn't come with promises or speeches. They came with the will to fight for peace. Across the stars, aliens spoke of humanity in both fear and admiration. To many, humans were a mystery. How could a species from a deadly, chaotic world show such compassion? How could the same beings who unleashed unimaginable destruction also be the ones to rebuild and heal? The galaxy had seen powerful empires before, but none that used power the way humans did. The Death Worlders didn't fight to dominate. They fought because they understood pain. Their homeworld, Earth, had taught them that life was struggle. Every storm, every predator, every disaster had forced them to become stronger, smarter, and more united. And because they had known fear and suffering themselves, they refused to let others face it alone. That was the truth behind their fury. It wasn't born from hatred, but from empathy carved by hardship. On peaceful planets, philosophers debated what humanity represented. Some said humans were the galaxy's protectors, a necessary force to keep balance among the stars. Others whispered that humans were a warning, proof that kindness without power meant nothing. There were still a few who feared them, believing that one day humanity's fire might turn against the galaxy itself. But even they couldn't deny one thing. When the galaxy needed them, the Death Worlders came. The Varians, who had once faced extinction, never forgot that. Generations later, their children and grandchildren still told the tale to each other. Teachers shared it in classrooms, artists painted it on walls, and musicians sang songs about the humans who came through fire to save them. It became more than history. It became a legend of unity. There was one phrase that echoed in every retelling. They came not to talk us into peace, but to make it possible. Those words, carved in stone on Varus 9, became a kind of prayer for other worlds facing darkness. When pirates attacked a colony or when war threatened the borders of a star system, people whispered the same hope. Maybe the Death Worlders would come again. But the humans never wanted worship or fame. They didn't see themselves as heroes. To them, what happened on Varus 9 was simply what needed to be done. The soldiers who fought there rarely spoke of it. The engineers who rebuilt didn't seek recognition. For humanity, it wasn't about glory. It was about compassion. It was about doing what others could not, because they understood what loss felt like. Admiral Sophia Marek, the woman who led the human fleet that saved Varus 9, once said in an interview years later, "We didn't fight for medals. We fought because we saw people who couldn't defend themselves. That's all there was to it." Her words were broadcast across hundreds of systems and became a saying of their own. Simple, honest, and powerful. In the centuries that followed, Varus 9 grew into a center of peace and diplomacy. Its skies, once filled with warships, now shimmered with trade vessels and exploration fleets. The humans and Varians worked side by side to teach other species how to defend themselves, how to find strength in cooperation instead of fear. And yet, even in peace, no one ever forgot what had made it possible. The courage and fury of those who had answered the call when no one else dared. There was something poetic about it. The most dangerous beings in the galaxy had become its greatest defenders. The Deathworlders, once seen as reckless, violent, and unpredictable, had proven that real peace doesn't come from soft words or treaties alone. It comes from the will to protect what matters even at great cost, and that will had burned brighter than any star. On distant worlds, storytellers would gather crowds in dim-lit halls, children sitting wide-eyed as they told the tale of Varus 9. The storyteller's voice would drop to a whisper when they described the moment the alien distress call went out, and then rise in awe when the human fleet appeared through the void, fire lighting up the stars. They would speak of the battle, the destruction, and finally, the monument that still stood tall in the Varian capital. And when the story reached its end, the storyteller would always say the same words now etched into history. When the aliens called for help, humanity answered, not with words, but with fire and fury. Those words carried across generations, through time and distance, through thousands of alien tongues. They became more than just a phrase. They were a reminder that sometimes peace demands more than talk. Sometimes it demands those who are willing to walk through fire so others don't have to. And so the legend of the Deathworlders lived on, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Their name carried both awe and caution, a mixture of fear and admiration that no one could quite separate. To the galaxy, humanity had become a paradox. Beings born from a world that tried to kill them every day, yet capable of kindness that could save entire civilizations. On Varus 9, as the twin suns set and the monument's shadow stretched across the city, the joined hands of steel and crystal still gleamed in the fading light. They stood as eternal proof that strength and mercy could exist together. That even in the darkest times, there were those who would fight, not for power, not for pride, but simply because it was the right thing to do. And whenever new visitors came to see it, they always left with the same thought, that peace, real peace, is not something you are given. It is something you make, something you protect. The story of Varus 9 reminded the galaxy that when the universe cried out for help, humanity had answered. They did not bring promises nor excuses. They brought fire, and with it, the hope that peace could rise from the ashes.